Hello everyone and welcome to my Beyond the Gates CBS Update 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Leslie makes a scene at the hospital press conference and Shanice decides her future with Ted. Fairmont Crest is still emotionally bleeding after the devastating warehouse tragedy, but while grief continues spreading through every family connected to the plasma ring fallout, new emotional bombshells are already erupting everywhere. Wednesday's episode of Beyond the Gates delivered emotional confrontations, heartbreaking confessions, relationship shifts, public meltdowns, and painful reminders that Derek Baldwin's death changed everything forever. And somehow, in the middle of all the chaos, Shanice Johnson finally made a decision about Ted Richardson. After weeks of uncertainty, jealousy, heartbreak, emotional exhaustion, and unresolved tension, Shanice finally revealed whether she still wants a future with Ted, and honestly, the answer probably surprised a lot of viewers. Shanice finally makes her choice. For a while now, it truly looked like Shanice and Ted were heading toward a breakup that neither of them would recover from easily. The emotional strain had become overwhelming. Ted's lingering emotional attachment to Nicole Dupree never fully disappeared. Leslie Thomas kept inserting herself into their relationship at the worst possible moments. Then Derek died, throwing Shanice into deep emotional grief and confusion. Everything seemed stacked against them. But over breakfast at the country club, Shanice finally opened her heart completely. And what she said revealed just how deeply she still loves Ted. Derek's death forced Shanice to reevaluate everything. Sometimes, tragedy changes people instantly. That is exactly what seems to have happened with Shanice. Derek's death shook her emotionally in ways she clearly did not expect. Losing someone so suddenly forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about life, relationships, and emotional priorities. When someone dies unexpectedly, especially someone close, people start questioning everything. Who matters most? What relationships are worth fighting for? What regrets would hurt them most if tomorrow never came? That emotional reckoning appears to have pushed Shanice toward clarity. Instead of continuing to run from her feelings for Ted, she finally admitted the truth. Despite all the complications, she does not want to lose him. Shanice accepts Ted's complicated past. One of the most mature things about Shanice's decision is that she no longer seems interested in pretending Ted's emotional history can simply disappear overnight. Nicole exists. That history exists. The feelings Ted once had and maybe still has exist too. But Shanice appears to have realized something important. Love is messy, especially in Fairmont Crest. Nobody enters relationships without baggage. Nobody arrives emotionally untouched. And honestly, Ted has never hidden the fact that Nicole would always matter to him in some way. The difference now is that Shanice seems ready to stop viewing that reality as competition. Instead, she is focusing on whether Ted chooses her now. And according to his actions lately, he clearly does. Ted finally draws a boundary with Leslie. One of the biggest moments in the episode happened when Leslie interrupted Ted and Shanice at breakfast. Normally, Ted might have handled the situation diplomatically, maybe too diplomatically. That pattern has frustrated Shanice repeatedly because it often made Ted seem incapable of fully shutting Leslie down. But this time was different. Very different. Ted immediately made it clear that Leslie was no longer welcome to interfere with his private time with Shanice unless the conversation involved their daughter directly. That moment mattered enormously. Not just because Ted defended Shanice publicly, but because he finally established a firm emotional boundary with Leslie. For Shanice, that probably felt like the first time Ted fully prioritized her feelings over avoiding conflict. And honestly, the chemistry afterward made it obvious Shanice loved every second of it. Ted and Shanice may finally be becoming stable. Ironically, it took almost losing each other completely for Ted and Shanice to finally reach emotional honesty. For months, their relationship has been fueled by insecurity, hesitation, jealousy, and unresolved emotional baggage. But now, things suddenly feel more balanced, more mature, more intentional. That does not mean their problems are magically gone. Nicole still exists emotionally in Ted's world, Leslie is still chaos incarnate, and Shanice is still grieving Derek. But for the first time in a while, Ted and Shanice actually feel like two people choosing each other consciously instead of stumbling through emotional confusion. Leslie immediately turns everything into chaos. Of course, no emotional breakthrough in Fairmont Crest can survive peacefully for long, not when Leslie Thomas exists. And predictably, Leslie spent the episode creating absolute chaos everywhere she went. The hospital press conference should have been a straightforward public relations effort designed to reassure the community after the plasma ring scandal exploded. Instead, Leslie transformed it into another dramatic spectacle centered around herself. Honestly, nobody does public emotional manipulation quite like Leslie. Elon and Ted try to control the damage. At Garland Memorial, Elon Hawthorne and Ted Richardson attempted to address public concerns about the plasma ring operation, Leah Whitmore's arrest, and the devastating consequences tied to the criminal network. The hospital desperately needs stability right now. Patients are terrified. Employees are traumatized. The community's trust has been shattered, and Derek's death made everything infinitely worse. Ted and Elon clearly understood that calming public fears needed to become the hospital's top priority. Unfortunately, Leslie had other plans. Leslie hijacks the press conference. The moment reporters began asking difficult questions about Derek's death and the clinic's possible connection to the plasma ring, Leslie inserted herself directly into the spotlight. Literally. She pushed Elon aside and took over the podium herself. And honestly, the second-hand embarrassment in that moment was intense. The crowd immediately started side-eyeing her. Reporters looked confused. Ted looked exhausted, but Leslie kept going anyway. She passionately defended her clinic, insisted they had nothing to do with the plasma ring intentionally, and emotionally honored Derek as one of her favorite employees. Then came the dramatic emotional breakdown. And because this is Leslie Thomas, the breakdown naturally ended with her collapsing directly into Ted's arms. Was Leslie being genuine? That is honestly the fascinating question. Because for once, Leslie's emotions did not feel entirely fake. Messy? Absolutely. Attention-seeking? Definitely. But there also seemed to be genuine grief underneath everything. Leslie really did care about Derek in her own way, and she truly is terrified that the plasma ring scandal could destroy the clinic she worked hard to build. The problem is that Leslie processes emotions through performance. Everything becomes theatrical. Everything becomes public. Everything becomes emotionally explosive. So even when her feelings are real, her behavior still creates chaos. Shanice probably noticed everything. One thing viewers should absolutely pay attention to is Shanice witnessing Leslie collapse into Ted's arms publicly. Because while Shanice may have recommitted emotionally to Ted, that does not mean all her insecurities disappeared overnight. Ted defending Shanice at breakfast was a huge win. But Leslie emotionally clinging to him publicly during a dramatic press conference, that could easily reopen old frustrations again. Especially because Leslie and Ted share a daughter, meaning Leslie will never fully disappear from Ted's life. Ever. And that reality remains the biggest long-term threat hanging over Ted and Shanice's relationship. Martin and Tyrell share one of the show's most honest conversations. Away from the hospital chaos, one of the strongest emotional scenes in the episode came from Martin Richardson and Tyrell Richardson Smith. Their father-son conversation felt surprisingly raw, vulnerable, and emotionally authentic. Tyrell privately admitted feeling insecure about his first sexual experience with Jessica. And honestly, that vulnerability made the scene incredibly human. Most teenage boys on soap operas pretend confidence constantly. Tyrell instead admitted uncertainty, fear, confusion. That honesty opened the door for Martin to share one of the most personal stories viewers have heard from him yet. Martin opens up about his past. Martin revealing that his own first sexual experience was with a girl despite eventually realizing he was gay, was a powerful moment. Not only because it explained more about Martin emotionally, but because it showed Tyrell something important. Life is complicated. Identity is complicated, and nobody has everything figured out immediately. Martin admitting he once believed life would simply be easier if he were straight added emotional depth to his entire character. History. It also highlighted just how transformative meeting Smitty eventually became for him. For the first time, Tyrell saw his father not just as a parent, but as someone who once struggled with confusion and insecurity too. Tyrell thinks Jessica is the one. Martin's emotional honesty unintentionally pushed Tyrell toward a major realization. He believes Jessica is the one. And honestly, that is both sweet and terrifying. Because viewers immediately knew disaster was probably coming. Soap operas almost never reward emotional certainty instantly. Sure enough, things went sideways quickly. Jessica's friend zones Tyrell. When Jessica stopped by later, Tyrell clearly expected emotional closeness after their night together. Instead, Jessica gently explained that she did not want a serious relationship. Not because the sex was bad. Actually, she specifically reassured him he was great. But because she plans on leaving for school and does not want to hurt him emotionally by starting something she cannot fully commit to. That conversation instantly shattered Tyrell's romantic fantasy. And honestly, the heartbreak on his face was painful to watch. Tyrell's emotional journey is just beginning. The interesting thing about Tyrell right now is that he seems emotionally wide open for the first time. He is vulnerable, hopeful, sensitive, and emotionally inexperienced enough that rejection hits extremely hard. Jessica likely intended kindness, but Tyrell probably heard something much more devastating underneath her words. You matter, but not enough for me to stay. That kind of heartbreak lingers, especially for someone experiencing first love emotions. Naomi continues holding everyone together. Meanwhile, Naomi Hawthorne quietly continues becoming one of the emotional glue characters holding Fairmont Crest together right now. Her scenes with Ashley demonstrated incredible compassion. Ashley remains emotionally destroyed after Derek's death. Every conversation still circles back toward guilt, grief, regret, and emotional collapse. So Naomi distracted her the only way she could think of through memory. The paper airplane scene was surprisingly emotional. Naomi suggesting a paper airplane contest based on childhood memories. With her father initially seemed playful, but underneath it was something much deeper. The scene represented temporary emotional escape. For a few moments, Ashley was not drowning in grief. She was simply existing, laughing, remembering simpler feelings. The kind of emotional relief matters enormously after trauma, because grieving people often forget they're still allowed to smile occasionally. Naomi instinctively understood that. Derek's father arrives. Then came another emotional gut punch. Derek's father Brian arrived to collect his son's remains and bring him home. And honestly, every scene involving Brian carried enormous emotional weight. Because unlike everyone else, Brian represents a different kind of grief. A parent burying a child. That pain changes people permanently. Brian gives Ashley Derek's belongings. One of the episode's most heartbreaking moments happened when Brian gave Ashley two deeply personal items connected to Derek. First, his Medal of Honor from his rookie year in the battalion. Then, a ring box. Ashley understandably expected something deeply romantic or serious inside. Instead, the box contained an arts and crafts medal Derek once received for rescuing a cat. And somehow that tiny detail made everything even sadder. Because it perfectly captured who Derek was underneath everything, a genuinely good man. Earnest, kind, a little goofy, heroic without needing recognition. Ashley laughing through tears after opening the box was emotionally devastating. Ashley's guilt keeps growing. Ashley then spiraled into painful self-blame again, wondering aloud why Derek somehow wasn't enough for her while he was alive. That guilt clearly continues consuming her. Grief often rewrites memories unfairly. People start romanticizing what was lost while blaming themselves for every imperfect moment. Ashley is doing exactly that. She keeps forgetting Derek was human too. Not perfect, human. Shanice brings Ashley perspective. Thankfully, Shanice reminded Ashley of something important. Derek may have been a hero in many ways, but he also hurt Ashley emotionally during their relationship. That reminder matters. Because grief sometimes transforms dead people into flawless saints. And while Derek absolutely deserves love and mourning, Ashley also deserves permission to remember reality honestly. Their relationship was complicated, messy, painful sometimes, and acknowledging that complexity does not diminish the tragedy of losing him. Brian blames Jacob. At the police station, another emotionally brutal moment unfolded between Brian and Jacob Hawthorne. Jacob tried offering condolences and assistance. Brian rejected the gesture completely. He refused even to shake Jacob's hand, and honestly, that reaction probably crushed Jacob internally. Because Jacob already feels responsible emotionally for what happened at the warehouse. Brian openly blaming him only deepens that guilt. Jacob is quietly falling apart. One thing becoming increasingly obvious is that Jacob is not okay emotionally. At all. He spent months undercover inside a violent criminal operation, nearly died, watched Derek get killed, helped expose massive corruption. And now he's being blamed publicly by grieving family members. That emotional weight adds up fast. Naomi recognizes that, which is exactly why she later expressed concern to Elon about Jacob's mental health. Elon knows the danger. Elon reassuring Naomi that Jacob will receive help if needed reveals something important. Even Elon sees the psychological damage undercover work caused. People do not simply walk away from months of deception, violence, fear, and trauma unchanged. Jacob may physically survive the plasma ring investigation, but emotionally, the real damage may only be starting. Grayson finally gets a small ray of hope. Elsewhere, Grayson Perez received something unexpected: compassion. After Jan learned more about his financial struggles and Ashley's rejection, Leslie surprisingly offered Grayson a potential job at the clinic pending the investigation outcome. And honestly, that moment mattered enormously for Grayson. Because right now, his entire life feels destroyed. Ashley hates him. His involvement in the plasma ring became public. Derek died, partly because of the situation surrounding him, and he remains emotionally drowning in guilt himself. The job offer represented the first glimpse of possible redemption. Leslie and Grayson understand each other more than expected. Ironically, Leslie and Grayson actually share surprising similarities emotionally right now. Both feel blamed. Both feel cornered. Both fear losing purpose. Both are trying desperately to survive public fallout connected to the plasma ring. That emotional overlap may explain why Leslie suddenly empathized with him. She recognizes desperation when she sees it, because she lives inside it constantly herself. Mona reveals her diagnosis. Meanwhile, Mona Wilson quietly revealed her type 2 diabetes diagnosis during her conversation with Jan. That scene added another layer of realism and vulnerability to the episode. Mona often functions as emotional support for everyone else. Seeing her admit her own health fears made her feel deeply human. And honestly, it also subtly reinforced one of Beyond the Gate's strongest themes lately. Life changes instantly. People are fragile. Nothing is guaranteed. Fairmont Crest feels emotionally exhausted. One thing this episode captured perfectly is how emotionally exhausted everyone in Fairmont Crest feels right now. Nobody truly has time to breathe. Every character is carrying grief, fear, guilt, heartbreak, suspicion, or emotional confusion simultaneously. The plasma ring storyline changed the emotional atmosphere of the show completely. Even scenes that appear lighter emotionally still carry heaviness underneath now. And honestly, that darker emotional realism is making the show stronger. Ted's support of Nicole is about to backfire. The ending tease for tomorrow's episode already hints at even more emotional complications ahead. Apparently, Ted's support of Nicole somehow backfires badly. And considering how emotionally fragile everything currently is between Ted, Shanice, Nicole, and Leslie, that could become a major disaster fast. Especially now that Shanice just recommitted emotionally to Ted. If Nicole and Ted suddenly start growing emotionally close again, Shanice's insecurities could immediately reignite. Dani and Bill are headed toward another explosion. Meanwhile, Dani setting Bill straight sounds like another confrontation viewers should absolutely prepare for. Bill Hamilton's life already feels increasingly unstable. Haley continues poisoning him slowly. His health keeps deteriorating subtly. Questions about Lynette remain unresolved. And now Dani apparently has more truths she intends forcing him to face. That never ends peacefully in Fairmont Crest. Ever. The emotional fallout is far from finished. What makes Beyond the Gates so compelling right now is that no single tragedy stays isolated. Everything spreads. Derek's death impacts Ashley. Ashley impacts Naomi. Naomi worries about Jacob. Jacob affects Elon. Ted supports Shanice. Leslie disrupts Ted. Nicole complicates Ted emotionally. Every storyline bleeds into another, and the emotional consequences keep multiplying. Fairmont Crest may never fully recover from what the plasma ring unleashed. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe my channel without missing any update.